Hello, everybody, and welcome to Take Your Time, a Persona 3 Reload podcast, where we play through Persona 3 Reload in real time alongside the in-game calendar dates. I am one of your hosts, Tom Marks, joined as always by the lovely, wonderful Jonathon Dornbush. Jonathan, how are you?
Tom, stop it, please. Use more adjectives to describe how wonderful I am, please.
That's not an. I don't know. I've. You know what the sad thing is?
You go
I'm
for a
writer.
D&D spell?
I'm a writer, and I have never been able to do Mad Libs without looking up what is a adverb. Always gets me. I don't know why.
It happens. I feel like whenever you get put on the spot for the thing you are known to do, it's the whole thing where comedians are always yeah, whenever I go to a party, someone's like, oh, you're a comedian, tell me a joke. It's that's not how it works. I can't just spin it out of nowhere.
But this one is particularly embarrassing because I could have just gone green, and that counts. So I don't know.
And
anyway,
for the audio listeners, I am green. So
yeah,
it makes
exactly.
sense. Yeah, works out.
We've got a pretty cool week to talk about today on the show. We had our second, technically, but sort of first actual full moon event of the game. If you don't count the very, very first one, which, was just tutorial stuff. But before we get to all that, we have to start with our confidant call out. Thank you to big shout out to everybody backing on our Patreon, patreon.com/takeyourtime at the Palace Ruler tier. We do a shout out to those folks because really, really appreciate their support. It means the world to us. It really, helps us keep this going and keep doing it and make it feel worth everything that goes into it. So, to those folk, this is the first one on this list?
Yes, it is. Go ahead.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. All one word. Akechi is a jelly bean. Alan, Astral Clock Tower, Cameron C, Dallas, Damon, Dan F, Danimal Lover 01, Default Titus, Dexter, Goro Akechi, Keegan H, Michael V, Philip S, Sam K, Sarah M, Shade, Tekma, Willie Wang Wang, and Zachary L. Thank you all to those Palace Ruler tier folk because, again, we really appreciate it. And if you want to support the show, if you want to hear bonus episodes, we're doing a monthly bonus episode or get the show ad-free or get the show a day early, any of that stuff, you can head over to patreon.com/takeyourtime and back us there. We'd really appreciate the support. So, bookkeeping from last episode. We have a pop quiz, but we also have a listener who wrote in about the previous pop quiz.
Yes, I wanted to include this because I love the levels that this comment has. This comes from Willie over at the Patreon, talking about the last pop quiz, which was about the homemade versus baked fresh or store-bought cake question that you put in. And Willie wrote, house-made is almost always better than store-bought, cakes or otherwise. But personal feelings aside, I feel the implication is that it's so easy to just pop over to the store and buy something. The punishment or requirement in the game requires personal attention, time, and perhaps introspection. It's less about food quality and more about the process. Cooking with love, baby. And I just like the idea of that was what the teacher was trying to really get across. Not that they just wanted a really good cake, but I didn't really think about it. I know we joked about it a lot, but I kind of like that. And also how that's a metaphor for the whole game where it does matter how much you personally put into the confidant relationships and all of that. It's just I didn't think about the cake that way, but now I'm going to think about it every time I see that scene.
No, it's nice. And I will argue, I think Willie is correct that homemade is almost always better, but the almost is key there for me because sometimes I'm just craving bad cake.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Sometimes, there's store-bought things that are just, I don't know, you just want that, that kind of slightly crummy but very satisfying and particular version of a thing.
Oh, yeah.
So.
No, I get it. There were a couple years where I was, hooked on this, Oreo cake when I was growing up, our local grocery had, and it was a fine cake. I'm sure I've had much better versions of that cake elsewhere and homemade, but I just sometimes wanted just that specific icing, that density of cake. That's just what I really wanted for a while, and sometimes it's okay.
Yeah. Anyway, pop quiz this week, or for last week's question was, when does Innocent Sin Online, the MMO that you play, you get access to when you get access to your computer, when does that game take place? Because it tells you in its intro. Did we get anybody right? What's your guess? You haven't looked up. You haven't seen the answer yet.
I haven't looked up the answer, so also I'm going to look at where I know everyone answered as we do this live, so that'll be fun for everyone. But no, I had written down, and I don't have, I think if you're looking for specific information, I'm going to disappoint, but I had like 1990X, like 199X written down.
Yes, that is part of the answer, yes.
So that's all I have. So that is my guess. I'll say, if I can just throw something out there, I guess.
Yeah.
Just because it is now, I'll say May. I'll say May 199X, even if it makes me wrong.
That is incorrect, but I'll give you half points. You got the year.
Cool.
Sort of. The actual answer is autumn 1990X. Specifically, autumn of that not year. And the 1990X thing is so funny to me because it always reminds me of that they did that in, I think, Mega Man, right? Like Mega Man takes place in like 20XX or 23XX or something like that. And there's that game that is inspired by Mega Man called 20XX, and the sequel 30XX is like kind of a joke at playing on that. Strong Bad, I always remember the Strong Bad emails. It's the Stinko Man anime cartoon is set in 20XD6, which is just like a poking fun at that structure. But I love that. I think it's very silly and fun.
As a kid, I always thought whenever I saw like the Mega Man one in particular, I was like, am I missing something? Like, is this a way that a certain year is known that I've never heard about? And I never wanted to ask because I felt like an idiot.
Well, 1990X too, it's funny to me because like if you do 20XX, that like makes more sense to me than like just the 90s sometime. Like just pick a year.
Yeah.
Just pick a year?
It was all the same anyway, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Eric T wrote in via email with the correct answer, did indeed have autumn. Dan wrote in on the Patreon with either a 199X or 2000X, so, half credit there as well. But I believe Eric was the most exact from what I'm seeing. If I am missing anyone's comments, I apologize. Please yell at me. I wanted to preserve the ingenuity of getting my question correct. I will read your name next week if I was wrong, and then just never do the show again, right? That seems fair and on the level?
Yeah,
cool.
That's good.
Good.
Locked
we'll
in.
Play it that way. Excellent.
Binding contract now. Arcana card pops up. We get a new confidant.
A new bond has formed.
Yes, exactly.
The Quitter Arcana. Anyway, congrats to Eric, and a partial congrats to Dan. But yeah, thank you to everyone who wrote in.
Moving on to this week in Persona 3 Reload. We went through the days of May 5th through May 11th, I believe. A week of continued free time and then this sort of big boss event that we'll dig into. But I guess let's just jump right in and start with May 5th, which was just a day of hanging out. I think this day is it's a Sunday, if I believe, or it's just a day off. It's the last day of Golden Week. That's what it is. So this is the last day of Golden Week, so you just have the day to do whatever you want. What'd you do?
Because it's a day where you're free, hung out with Maya, because they're a rare confidant, so I always take the opportunity.
Yep, that makes sense. That's what I did as well. This, again, not getting too deep into it because we can go over the confidant storylines a little later, but this one's starting to get weird because you're starting to learn that this person is a grown adult.
Yeah.
They mentioned again, I will go into the super specifics, but they mentioned that they've been at the job that they're in for 8 years, and I was like, whoa. Doing some basic math, that means you are probably 30s. You're in your 30s.
Potentially. Yeah.
I'm 15.
I've loved my job ever since I was a toddler. It's really an indictment of child labor laws. No, it's I will discuss a lot of the confidants as we go on, but it's been hard to have a straight face during some of the intro ones where you're like, this is interesting or new, and I'm like, oh, just you wait.
Dude, all of them, it really feels like, gosh, it's just that sort of like stereotypical. And this is not a criticism of it, because we're going to talk about this more with another confidant that I met this week as well. But like, it feels very sort of over-the-top anime that all of these people are charming, plucky characters with a dark, brooding past that is immediately alluded to, and you're like, wow.
Oh yeah, no, it's not shy about that too. Because I guess without going into spoilers too much, I feel like a lot of the confidants, especially the early scenes for a lot of them, are very quick. So there's not room for subtlety really in the game's exploration of them, which is what some as many people say, subtlety is for cowards. But I think it's really interesting to see how it very like thickly lays on the idea that like there are very similar themes that I think you'll get through a lot of the confidants as you see more of them, or it's like they're clearly overarching ideas in the game that it is trying to get at with these, even if some of them are very random. But
yeah, but I'm on board still. I'm having fun. I'm just like meeting these people. It's just it's very transparent about that stuff.
Oh yeah.
Then after this, going into the evening, the home shopping channel package arrives, which is nice. And then that evening, I just worked at the cafe because it was urgent again, and I am still flat broke constantly.
I did the same. As I was playing this day, I'm like, if Tom didn't do the same thing, I really want to dig into why, because I just feel like, not that you or I are like bad players by any stretch, but I'm like, I think we're going to do like the right thing here and focus on what makes the most sense.
And you alluded to this a couple episodes ago also of like, there are going to be more days like this in this run where it just sort of is a little bit more straightforward. I'm sure it will branch off as we start getting more options of people to hang out with, things to do at night. Like there's still half the shops in that mall are closed, right? So I'm imagining it's going to branch out, but right now it is a little bit more straightforward for some of these days.
Yeah, especially, I don't know what the exact number is, but we've not met even like a quarter or a third probably of the confidants. Like there's quite a few more to go.
That's great.
Yeah, we'll see as it goes. Well, we've probably met about a quarter, but like, yeah, we'll get plenty more as we go on.
And this is also absolutely not like a criticism, right? This is not a problem unless you are playing the game slowly for a podcast alongside a co-host. It's probably a good thing that these things are a little bit more direct at the beginning for a normal run through.
Yes, no. It is very funny. We've had one or two people in the Patreon mention, I think Francis mentioned in the Patreon that this is their third time playing, and they're like, I'm trying to play along with you guys. It's very difficult to do this. And someone else I've spoken to who's listening along, I think Damon in the Patreon also was like, yeah, I just kind of want to keep going. And I'm like, you can. As Thomas said, this is silly. What we've decided to do is silly. But I enjoy it. So here we are.
But I will say, it's not affecting my enjoyment of the game in a negative way to play this slow. Maybe I'm just used to it after P5, but I don't feel like I'm getting a diminished version of the game necessarily.
Which
I think I'm glad about.
We should talk about it at the end of this run, since this is your first time playing the game. That's the first experience either of us has had like this for this show, where it is the first playthrough entirely. And yeah, I think there's something to be said for just literally taking your time with a game.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're on day one.
Moving to the 6th, May 6th. This is the first day back at school after Golden Week. There's a couple things happen. So you get a little there's a hint. You get to hear some kids talking, and they mention kind of in passing, which is such a funny thing for high schoolers to talk about, to be like, I've heard there's a little girl who's hanging out over at the shrine alone. That's weird. And your like immediate impulse is like, I wonder if something's wrong, which is very sweet. It's kind of like, it's nice of your character to do that.
Yeah, it's a polite way to go about like listening in on like, why are these kids talking about a little child over at the shrine? Like, what's happening here? But I guess it does give you a sense that the world is very tight knit to the fact that they would know about this. But yeah, it's a funny little mention of, hey, maybe you should go check this thing out.
Yeah. There's a class that day with Mr. Onushi talking about trains, talking about the pantograph generator of what generates trains, which I immediately was like, this is weird. I don't know why we're talking about this. And then it found out pretty aggressively later with the full moon, where you're on a train being powered by shadows instead of electricity.
Again, subtlety is for cowards. But yeah, I do like that the teacher, again, just with these teachers, they're like, They're tired of teaching. Like, the teacher even says, I don't want to teach the lesson that we have on the books. Here's fun facts about trains.
Yeah.
Great. Sure.
I am loving the teachers. The teachers are a great part of this game so far.
Yeah, they are very funny and very extremely unhappy about having to teach.
Yes. After class, I did go to the shrine. I assume you did too.
I did as well, yeah.
And there's this little girl you meet named Maiko who you can't actually hang out with yet because instead you have to befriend her slowly. So you buy an elementary school girl you just met and don't know, quote, weird takoyaki and the in-game equivalent of Red Bull. You're literally giving a child Red Bull at a park unsupervised, and then she's like, bye.
No issues here. I don't see any problem with it. Yeah.
I do.
I used to always be hanging out at the jungle gym handing out Monster energy drinks. Isn't that what everyone did in high school? No, yeah, it's a weird one.
I will say I don't mind. I mean, I'm just poking fun, right?
Yes. No,
I do dig that some of these confidants, and we're going to talk about this later too, I think tomorrow, but I like that some of the confidants are rolling out a little bit slower. Like I made fun of Kenji for being like, "Hey, you're another guy in my class. We're best friends now." But I do think that some of them take a little bit more time and kind of you have to buy in. You got to know about the person a little more, get them to trust you a little more, which I think is cool.
Yeah, there's a nice balance, I think, of people who are just immediately available to you. And it's like, sure, people just want to open up, and other stuff where there is a little bit of a hoop you have to jump through. But I do think it encourages you to explore the world. It kind of creates a natural, like, maybe there's a reason why these people will want to keep talking to us instead of just forcing us to because it's a game. Yeah, I do think it at least helps sets a precedent there, which is nice.
Just don't buy children in parks Red Bull in real life, please.
I feel like we can support that. Yeah, we can back that message. Don't do that. Yeah.
It's not a controversial opinion.
The official stance of this podcast when it comes to Red Bull for children is probably not.
Or more specifically, Red Bull for children you don't know in parks?
Sure. Yes. Yeah. If you really want to drill down. For children, go ahead.
How non-controversial can we get this statement?
We're just really taking just like the easiest win on this one.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I did kind of a weird thing this day. Actually, yeah, I did kind of a weirder thing this day. I spent time with Bebe at the fashion club.
Nice.
Because I could. And I was like, you know what? This seems fun. And it wasn't even on the little online thing, the what did other people do, which I thought was cool. And I decided to just hang out with him and got the Temperance Arcana from him.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Bebe, I think, is an easy one to almost like forget about just because you get introduced in the storyline from the couple at the bookstore, but you might forget about them if you're not exploring the school all the time, if you're not looking around. Yeah. It's
and you need intelligence level 2 to even get in the door.
Yes.
And then he's only available on certain days.
Yeah. So it's, you got to do the legwork if you want friends. That's what it's teaching you. I hung out with Odagiri for the day. So
cool.
Why can't I think of the word? Student council. There we go.
Yeah, that was the one I was thinking of doing if I hadn't done this. But that is like we talked about how our days are similar, but I feel like our confidants are already going wildly off in different directions. Our confidant paths.
Yeah, there's definitely a few where I'm like, we're gonna have to settle on one. I think that I'll follow your lead, honestly, because I've seen them all. So whatever ones you start to notice a pattern of interest in, I'll be like, I'll start focusing in on that one so we can talk about it.
Well, I don't want to deny you any trophies though, so
I'll get them. Don't you worry about that.
That evening, what did you do?
Well, first I stopped off because I didn't do it last week because I know we had talked about it, but I went to the club.
Yeah.
That drive-in bass beat, that definitely is non-litigiously like any other songs. Just a very simple rhythm. Yeah, I don't know if you want to talk about the club here. I know we have story stuff this week, but if you want
Yeah, can we talk about how nobody dances? No,
what do
wait,
you mean?
Excuse me. Like 3 people are dancing?
They're all posed perfectly like, whoa, we're dancing.
I gotta imagine this is a performance thing, right?
Sure.
Because I don't know about you, but like the mall lags for me on PC.
I'm on PS5 and it doesn't lag.
That's very interesting. Yeah, the mall at highest quality graphics is actively laggy when I'm walking around it.
Interesting. I do, not to. I think very clearly, or at least from my perspective, I think P3R has a lower budget than P5 did. I think that
absolutely.
is a reasonable assumption to make.
Yeah.
And again, not an indictment of the game, just kind of stating like from the optics of playing. And I think the level of kind of stillness you get from the scenes is really interesting. It does create sort of like an eeriness to parts of the world, but I'm not like, again, to your point, not dinging the game necessarily for that right now, because I understand kind of like the level of what they can, what they want to achieve and where they have to kind of cut back on things. But yeah,
of course.
It is very funny to go into a place like that does have all of these NPCs that you can kind of run through, and they're very static.
I don't know what a better way would have done, because I understand the limitations of what they had to do, both budgetary and technical. But for some reason, having like 30 completely static people and then like 3 that are dancing within them is so much more distracting to me than if they were just all still or there were fewer of them. I don't know. It's very distracting to be in that club.
I assume it's very much like they want to convey the density of a club, because it would be very weird if there's like 5 people hanging out in this club. But if everyone was dancing, it probably would pull performance down, or there would probably be a lot of distraction to just like visual noise for your character. It is almost an imperfect solution for the way the game is set up. Or there is no perfect solution, I should say.
Yeah.
So I kind of get what it's going for. But it's also, I would just say, like, to talk about the club itself, it's a very funny club. Both for the people you can talk to and just the, like, options of shops and things you can do. Not, like, I'm not going to say whether or not it's a good club. Look at me or listen to me. Do you think I go to clubs? I think the thing that interests me is, like, I don't know of the clubs I've been to if there's one dude selling URLs in the back and then also a very expensive jewelry dealer and a psychic.
And then a fortune teller.
Yeah. Like, what a mix. I love it.
2009 was a weird time, man.
Working on floppy disks, as I said last week. And going to clubs to buy jewelry, as you do. It's an interesting place.
It's a cool little hub. I like this idea that it's like a sort of hub within a hub, a shop within a shop sort of space.
Yeah.
It's very funny theming, but that's fine.
It works.
I did go there last week and bought both the URLs they have, which
Good.
I was interested. I assume you did the same. They're not that expensive, and then you got to use them at the computer.
Yeah, he without spoiling too much, he will replenish on more URLs.
I figured, yeah.
These are generally pretty good ones to get and use earlier on for the most part. I forget what these two do off the top of my head. I'm blanking.
I used them both this week, so we will discuss that.
Perfect. But yeah, they're very useful. The fortune teller, as you had pointed out, they're related more to Tartarus. So they give you benefits related to I believe it's getting like items or like the strength of persona. I'm totally blanking on them as well. I spend a little time in the club, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, it's basically little boons, right?
Yes, yeah.
Things you can pay for to get benefits, yada, yada, yada.
Exactly. And then there's, of course, the jewelry dealer, which, given how broke we are, I'm not buying any of that stuff right now.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a later game thing. We can talk about that more later. But yeah.
Yeah, those things were expensive.
Oh, yeah. That was like, I don't have P5 money. What is going on here? How is this possible?
Can't just use Palimpa to farm mid-bosses or whatever.
It's worth going back to for the URLs. I do think the fortune teller boons can be beneficial for sure. And yeah, the conversations you pick up on, like the people's repeated conversation bits that you can speak to, there's some funny bits to go in there for.
Cool.
Yeah.
Anyway. So what did you do for your actual time?
Yeah, so I went to the club. That didn't take up any time. And then I went to Up Academics at the arcade because I still was not at level 2 academics yet at this point. So I did that. What about you?
I used the computer to do the URL that was like, it was like a URL that was basically a secret school message board for your school, and now I can buy taiyaki at the school store.
Good. This is definitely an early one to do, because have you gotten a sense of what that does? Did you buy any?
Not too early, because the next day I went and bought taiyaki, and it was like, hey, that's some warm taiyaki. You should put it in the fridge. So I went back to the dorm, and they said, hey, the fridge is broken for another month. And I went, what? And it's not even that it's broken. It's that it's gonna get cleared out on the 31st, and I guess you just can't make room.
You can't do it.
And then the fridge in your room, because there are 2 fridges you have access to, and neither work. So now I'm gonna have lukewarm taiyaki in my inventory for 3 weeks, and then I'm gonna put it in a fridge, and then it'll be acceptable for some reason.
That's how food works. I don't see any confusion there. Yeah, it weirdly,
I love this.
For a game where I'm like, I let so many like leaps of faith in terms of reality versus non-reality go. This is one of the ones too where I was like, no, hold on. I could definitely make room in this fridge. That is not an impractical thing that I have to wait 3 more damn weeks to do. We can make this happen.
It's very funny, but I enjoy it a lot. I also like that there is this sort of interesting sub-quest thing going on where, like, I had to get charm to get into the club and then buy this URL and then use the URL, and that makes me go to the store where I buy the taiyaki, and then I gotta put the taiyaki in the fridge, and then I don't know what happens from there. Like, I think I enjoy that, right? I enjoy this little chain of things you have to do to get something rather than just walking to a store and buying it.
No, totally. The little scavenger hunt of it, and that it, again, makes you think about the time that's passing, not to forget that. Is important to do. I think it is worth it. There are other similar things that'll pop up with that kind of like scheduling that are important. I like the way it trains you to think about the time that's passing in the game and to not just keep letting time go by on and on and on endlessly. It's worth it. I'm glad you did that immediately because it helps to just be a thing that you want to keep up with as you go. With that, just a very small, very inconsequential thing, because you were just talking about the room. Make sure I don't know how long it takes, but like every few days, maybe when you're able to be in your room, just go check in, click on the prompt to look in the mirror. Okay. Nothing major. It's just, I think, a cute thing that we can talk about, a few weeks from now. I think it's just a cute little thing. So you did that. You're talking about May 7th. I guess we can just jump there.
Yes. Yeah. So I bought May 7th, I bought the taiyaki, and then I did another thing which I wanted to bring up. You mentioned, are you talking to Chihiro, I think, at one point last week?
Yes. Yeah.
And I was like, no, not really. And then I talked to her this time, and it was like another little development, and she didn't want to hang out with me yet. And I was like, oh, so I got to be talking to her a few times and kind of get her into a place where she's actually comfortable hanging out with me as an actual confidant. Which, again, I think is really cool. I think that it's nice that you have to sort of put in the work and have these little mini conversations before you actually form a bond with someone.
Yeah, and
especially if it's her because she's shy, right?
Yeah, no, it totally fits the character. And I think it's just one of those cool things where it's like, if you do not go talk to her, you may never get this confidant to work out. It's
right.
I think it does a really good job of being a relatively small world that encourages you to explore every nook and cranny of it, because you don't know what you're going to miss. And even if there's stuff that you like, there's just nothing in a room, it's cool to go see a little bit more of the world. It's cool to learn a little bit more about it. And I think it just makes like the space matter more, which I really appreciate.
Sure.
Yeah. So you talk to her, but that doesn't spend your time. So what'd you end up doing?
Correct. Yes. I hung out with Kenji again. I got him another level. He told me his secret plan. Mm-hmm. Can we talk about his secret plan for a second?
How are you feeling about Kenji now, my friend? If I may, I'm going to say, spoiler warning for this.
It's like rank 3, I think. Yes. It's pretty early in Kenji's storyline.
Because spoilers, I also hung out with Kenji this afternoon. And yeah, spoilers for, and I'll say spoilers over. I'll probably try to timestamp this. Kenji rank 3. You find out what his secret plan is, and
it's to date a teacher.
Yep. Really wish I hadn't found out that secret plan.
Okay. I know. Again, I don't want to keep comparing to Persona 5, but we got to talk about this in the context of whatchamacallit,
Kawakami?
Yeah, Kawakami, who is the teacher that you can date as the main character in Persona 5. The weird thing to me is that this existing, Kenji being into his teacher, and you kind of like very consciously being like, that's weird, dude. Why? What? Like, at least that's how it was presented initially to me, is like, he knows it's strange.
But also, if you want to succeed in his confidant, you just have to be like, good luck, man. Hope it
Oh,
goes.
yeah, you just gotta totally pander to him.
You're his hype man this whole time for a terrible decision. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just so funny to me that, like, they put this in to 3 as, like, a thing that is weird. And then in 5, they're like, you do it now. You want the good abilities? Do this.
Yeah, you want arguably one of the best abilities in Persona 5? Look at me. Look at me. You're the creepy one now, okay?
It's, like, so funny.
Yeah, it's not great. It's not great.
I'm excited to see where Kenji goes, because, gosh, it could just go so many different ways.
You will find out, my friend. Yeah.
I hope they're married by the end of this game.
You hope they're married? We have to talk about where. Yeah, no, it's yeah, it's a hard one to realize where, because the first couple, you just kind of get the sense, and you get a little bit with Junpei too. It's like, clearly there's just some horny teens in this world. We're just dealing with they're just some horny teens.
I'm not like writing it off. It could still, I don't know enough, right? It could still go the route of him just getting absolutely embarrassed and realizing he's an idiot. Like, I don't know.
No,
but
totally.
it's so funny that this is the I've played 2 Persona games, and both of them involve children trying to date their teachers. It is deeply upsetting.
If I had a nickel for every time that happened in a Persona game, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's boy. Yeah.
So you said you also hung out with Kenji.
I did, yeah. So I got to rank 3 with him as well. One of the notes, and then I'll end the spoiler warning if I could. What I think really just further digs Kenji into the creeper hole is that I wrote this down so I didn't forget, is that he describes her as like not mainstream beautiful, but still good looking. Like he's like weirdly negging the teacher that he has a crush on. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not good. None of it is good.
No. Yeah, it's a weird one. We'll see how it keeps going from here. But anyway, that's what I did for the day. Spoilers over for that and Persona 5 a little bit. Anyway.
Yes. Okay. Going to the evening. I need to bring up a detail that I noticed. I tried to figure out how to do this in a pop quiz, but I couldn't figure it out. This has nothing to do with this day, but it happened this night, and I wrote it down in all caps in my notes. Go around the, like, I don't know if this happens in other areas. Go around the lounge area, the first floor lounge area of the dorm. And just, I'll let people discover this on their own to a certain extent. Look at all of the lamps. And look at all of the, what? You just smiled really quick.
I don't know where you're going, but
look at all the computers, look at the phones, look at all the electronics.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
No. Just go look at the wires for every lamp and phone and computer and vending machine in the entirety of the dorm, because it is flabbergasting that they put that much effort into that stuff.
I love it. It's wild. Also, someone, I forget where, I think it was on the YouTube comments, someone pointed out, if you haven't seen it, it might have been in the past week. I'll try to look for some footage, but if you haven't seen it yet, also keep an eye. Have you seen Yukari snacking at any point?
No,
She's
I haven't
eating
paid attention.
What looks like Pocky, and just the way her animation of her eating the Pocky is like, she is just inhaling these things. Like, it is ridiculous how much.
Didn't Yusuke do that in Persona 5 at one point? There's like, if you're just hanging out in your hideout, he's just in. I took a video of it on my phone.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think it's a very similar situation. Yeah,
love it.
It's go around the hideout. Like, I definitely recommend, to your point, just also like look around, check out things. There's always new dialogue. There's always mostly always new dialogue. There's little things. It's a fun place to be around. But yeah.
So that evening, I went to the computer and I did the other URL I got, which is the Iwa Todai forum, and it unlocks new items at a vending machine at the Iwa Todai station. So that's cool.
Perfect. I did the dark web code about the school, so I unlocked the Taiyaki that night. Yeah, it's good. Those codes are useful. There will be, I would argue, much more useful ones as we go on. These are more introductory, but yeah, always good to check in on them.
Yeah. The 8th. This is the last day before the full moon. I hung out with Kenji again. How about you?
I did as well. I guess that's a good point, though. He probably told you something. This is like a slight spoiler, I suppose. But did he tell you something before your hangout?
Oh, I don't remember.
So when you go from Kenji rank 3 to rank 4, again, slight spoilers, I'll put in a spoiler code for this. He tells you about someone named the Gourmet King.
Did I just skip over this when I asked him to hang out? I don't know.
Maybe, but essentially this will help you unlock another confidant that is in the Polina mall.
Ah, okay.
And so you'll see a student, Gakukan High student by the fountain sitting on the benches as a new confidant option. This is, just to slightly do it, this is Suimitsu, who you might have seen on because that's people who just hung out with Kenji day after day very early, unlock that super early. And so
there's a chance that I might have gone from 2 to 3 and then, or 1 to 2 and then 2 to 3 with Kenji.
Okay.
And that maybe I didn't see it yet.
Potentially. But if you knew about a secret plant, maybe not. Anyway, just go talk to him one more time. It'll be worth it.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay.
Sorry if that spoils it, but
No.
I can cut that out. It's fine. I just keep saying cut everything out. The episode
not gonna be a show left.
Long. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did the same that day though.
Cool. So we both hang out with Kenji again, and we won't go into the details of that story anymore today. And then what did you do in the evening? Because I did a silly thing.
I just ate at Wakatsu.
I studied at my desk because I was fully broke.
Oh.
I had bought Jack Frost to hang out with Kenji, and I was I had merged all my confidants down, and I was like, I just need a thing, so I got it, and then I literally had less than 1,000 yen in my bank account.
Life
so I
is
just
tough.
Studied.
Yeah, early game is tough.
I got duped because I was expecting us to go into Tartarus for this full moon the next day, and I was like, I'll make some money back there, or I'll make some money in whatever the fights are going to be, or maybe the boss will give me money, and none of that happened.
Yeah, we'll get into it in just a few minutes, but it is an unexpected, I absolutely, first time was like, oh, we're going to go fight a boss in Tartarus at that level that we stopped at. That's what's going to happen here, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, so we both got academics, one of us just paid for it. That was that evening.
Are you at rank 2 yet?
I did get there this week. But since I had mentioned, if you get to rank 3, you get tops, I'm trying to go for that right now. So, all in. But yeah.
Cool. So let's talk about the big day. This is the 9th. This is the full moon day. Not only do you not get to do an afternoon or an evening thing, it literally goes from school. You're just I'm at school, and then suddenly it's no, it's the dark hour now. So you go right into it. And you have Mitsuru, there's a scene back of the dorm that says, Mitsuru and Akihiko are talking, and she says she's trying to use her detection powers outside of Tartarus, which Akihiko says, well, can't you not do that? And she's like, I need to try to get better so that I can, do more. And so she's training, basically, and then detects this giant shadow out of nowhere all of a sudden, and sends you all off to go destroy this shadow because it's outside of Tartarus, and you don't want it to destroy the city, essentially, which raises a point that they haven't really talked about and does get talked about more after this shadow fight, which is people don't know the dark hour is there, but if a building got destroyed during the dark hour, they would wake up and there would be a building destroyed, right? So stuff can happen physically in this world during that time that will affect people after it.
Yeah, this is not an inconsequential space. Just
Right.
because people are mysteriously gone in coffins, it can. You die in the game, you die in real life situation. Like,
Right.
things can go horribly awry in the dark hour.
So you rendezvous with Mitsuru in front of the station, the monorail station, where she shows up on a motorcycle. And this is kind of this funny little narrative thing that happens here where they say all electronics don't work during the dark hour, but oh, I had this motorcycle custom made, so it's fine.
I wrote that too. I love that little fact. It's like, yeah, we can't use anything except my bitchin' motorcycle. It's a great motorcycle, to be fair. There's a shot of Mitsuru driving it in the opening cutscene, which I love.
Yeah.
It's a really fun, cool moment. But yeah, it's one of those things.
I'm on board for the motorcycle, but I always think that is sort of lazy writing when you're like, here's this concept for why stuff doesn't work, but also this one thing is the exception to that we're introducing at the same time as that concept. It's like, what?
Yeah.
What? Okay, sure.
What's the point then? But no, yeah,
The point is that it makes Ikutsuki bike and be out of breath later.
Yes, very true. That causes for a little bit of fun later. But no, it's very much just kind of sets up the stakes a little bit more, that things are off kilter in the dark hour.
Yeah, it also sets up obviously that you're going onto the monorail tracks and they are off, right? That is part of what this is.
The pantograph or whatever doesn't work.
Yeah, right, exactly. So you go up onto the monorail tracks. The shadow is on the monorail, so you need to walk along the tracks, which is super cool. I was expecting this to be in Tartarus, so the fact that this was out in the world was really, really neat twist to me. You walk along the tracks, and you get onto one of the monorail trains, and then the doors close behind you.
Ooh.
And you get ambushed, and you basically get ambushed by shadows and have to fight your way. It's this kind of extended sequence that is very on rails, where you have to fight your way up to the front of the train to see what is controlling, because the shadows have taken over the monorail to some extent.
To your point, also with like the electricity not working, it's safe for you to now walk on the track, so everyone's able to get there. It again ties into all that. But yeah, it is essentially, I really like it as well in the sense of, I think it throws you for a loop of not knowing what you're going to expect when these big moments happen, because clearly you're not just gonna, you would assume, not go to the monorail track every time. So it creates the sense of like throwing you on edge, the way the characters are on edge as well, because it's against their understanding of how everything works here. I do really love, though, that it doesn't forget how impactful Tartarus is and its presence in the dark hour, because as you approach the train, there is a beautiful shot of like Tartarus in the background, sort of displayed pretty prominently back there as you approach from the left to the train that kind of gets closer on the right as it zooms in. It's a really beautiful shot, and I think just helps kind of convey the spookiness and etherealness of this like looming presence. But yeah.
Totally.
You go through some fights.
Yeah, you go through some fights. A shadow runs away from you. You get a choice of either running after it or being careful, or kind of like that. And Junpei runs after it. I chose to be careful. I don't know if that actually changes anything.
Not to my knowledge. I chose to just go for it. So
right.
We just went in.
So did you fight with Junpei?
So he leaves. He leaves.
So he still runs ahead.
Yes,
yeah. So I was wondering maybe if you chose to run ahead, you would go fight with Junpei, and if you chose to stay behind, you'd fight with Yukari. But it sounds like it's just the same either way.
To my memory, yeah, I believe it's just the same. But if anyone played differently and I'm just misremembering, please let us know.
No, I mean I chose to be safe. So
yeah, and I'm pretty sure I risked it. So yeah.
So you do this little mini fight with Yukari alone, and then you catch up to Junpei, who is being sort of a jerk, kind of in an unexplained way. He's just being very pig-headed about it.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about characters overall. I don't know if you want to save that for as we get to the end of this.
No, sure.
But,
yeah.
I think I wrote down earlier in it too, I think there's a very like telling moment where Junpei gets upset that you are essentially put in charge.
Right.
And is just like, why does he always get to be chosen? He's like, I got this. I've got it covered. No worries about it. And gets, pretty upset about you doing this. And I think what was an interesting thing to me to realize here is like, while he's been like overly friendly to you, you have known each other for 3 weeks. And technically you're not hanging out a lot. Like, in a little bit of a different way from the Phantom Thieves, who were pretty much like talking most of the time, to my like understanding of how things were. Other than checking in the evenings, you're living pretty distinct lives.
Yeah.
Is what
you chat at school, right?
Yeah.
Occasionally, but that's pretty much it.
So I think what you see here is a little bit of the idea of like these people as individuals a bit more. And yeah.
Sure.
Junpei doesn't love being pushed to the side in this case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he gets a little in trouble.
Yeah.
You have to go, bail him out. So you finally get to the front of the train. Does the train start moving? I think the train starts moving. That's what happens.
Before you get to the end, yeah.
Yeah, the train starts moving before you get to the end, and suddenly you're like, oh no, it's going to crash into the next train. We got to get to the front of the train and stop it. Which, again, brings up this weird thing of, which they do touch on, of like, you can just, like, people can just move in the dark hour, and then, like, wouldn't there be a lot more car accidents and stuff if everyone's cars just stopped working and they showed up in coffins? Wouldn't they just keep moving, or would they? I don't know.
Yeah, I guess to me theoretically, I guess the dark hour, like everything just grinds to a halt immediately. Yeah, it's sort of like a flash frame.
It'd have to,
everything pausing. So
that, but also, like, what about planes?
Yeah.
It's just one of those questions where you just got to not think about it, or else it starts to really fall apart in your hands.
Well, it's the same when you think about, like, the snap in the MCU. It's like, what happened to all of those planes and all of those people on boats and all of these things? Like,
yeah, when they came back.
Yeah, and they're just...
Would those people be 10,000 feet in the air?
Exactly. So, yeah, it starts to bring up a little bit of, like, this is going to get a little too dark. So, yeah, I just kind of accepted for, like, in the moment, here's what works, here's what doesn't. Yeah.
That works for me. That works for me. And you finally do get to the front, and there's this big sort of boss fight, right? And Shade, you said our Patreon backer has a little more insight on this boss, who's like this sort of paper themed, like it's this woman, this black and white woman with these long sort of paper, not tentacles, but the coming off of her. And attacking you with them, that sort of thing.
In my notes, I wrote paper tentacles, so you're not wrong. But yes,
there you go.
Probably more prominently, you may have noticed this shadow has a B and a J written on their chest, just right out in the open. And it's a pretty weird sight if you don't kind of know any of the context of all of this.
It's also a pretty weird sight, I imagine, specifically from an English-speaking audience, where those two letters together usually mean something else.
Yes, yeah. On a like very suggestively posed female body shadow,
right,
for those letters to be there. I was like, hold on now.
It all reads sexualized in a way that I think it's not meant to, or not to that extent.
It's
right?
not the sole intention of this. Because Shade from the Patreon wrote, with our first boss, let us talk about her design, specifically why she has the letters B and J on her boobs. The boss is representative of the High Priestess, which in traditional tarot decks is shown as a woman flanked by a black column with a B on it and a white column with a J on it. The letters are meant to tell us that the columns are, and forgive me if I butcher the pronunciation of these, Boaz and Yachim, the two columns that stood at the entrance to the Temple of Solomon. There's actual reference to the two of them in Persona 5 as well. If you look at the collar of Makoto's summer uniform, she has an emblem on it emblazoned with the letters B and J, as she is the High Priestess in that game.
That's such a cool little detail.
Yeah, and I went to go look at all this just because I was like, obviously I trust you because this is otherwise a crazy fantasy to write in the Patreon.
But an insane thing to tell us.
But I just was like so curious to see this, and there's plenty of those depictions around there, and I was just like, I think it's really interesting the way that the Arcana stuff ends up being depicted in this game, because I pretty much don't think about it most of the time.
Yeah, it's really subtle and kind of brilliantly done. Like we've given this game a lot of crap this episode for not being subtle, right? But the Arcana themes and the general sort of stuff around that aesthetic is actually very subtle. Right? They do not throw that stuff in your face, and they do seem to have thought about it a lot.
Yeah.
So it's not fully fair for us to say subtlety is for cowards, but
No, I mean, for what it's worth, obviously, most of the joking there, I truly love when things are unsubtle. I think it's fun when things wear their heart on their sleeve. So yeah, no, the subtlety is coward thing. Total joke there. I don't mind it at all. But yeah, I think it's just for a thing that is so clearly a part of the consistent bit of gameplay you play, I rarely put much thought into the arcana aspects of things, and I guess I should a little bit more, because I think, yeah, it's interesting to see it pop up in this way. So thank you to Shade for pointing that out.
Totally. The fight itself, mechanically, you are on the train, it's moving, and you go, oh no, we only have 30 minutes to defeat this shadow in order to not crash. Of course, that quickly changes because you get her down to a certain amount of life, and then they speed up, and suddenly it's like 5 or 15 minutes, and then they get her down a little more life, and she speeds up again, and you only have less than 5 minutes, right? So you always had way less than 30 minutes in that time, and you just kind of, it's telling you to go fast, move fast. There's this pressure on it. I guess I'll start. This fight was lame. Super, super lame.
Tell me why you think so.
Dug the theme. Mm-hmm. Cool character design. Mm-hmm. Train fight is exciting to a certain extent, although sort of pointless in actuality. Totally mindless fight. I'm going to be really honest. This whole full moon sequence really was disappointing to me for my first one. It was... I wish that there was any strategy to this fight. And I will admit, I got a little lucky, or not a little lucky, pretty dang lucky in that I had Jack Frost. I had made Jack Frost for that Kenji interaction, and so I was just immune to her ice attacks, so I didn't get totally wrecked when I was fighting her in the way that my party members were, to some extent. I had to do a little bit of kind of smart healing here and there, but attacking-wise, there's no... she didn't have any weakness that I could see, I don't think, or that I found. I tried all the elements I had access to. She doesn't really change besides summoning some minions and making the timer that was falsely long go to its actual length. So you're just sort of slamming attacks and healing occasionally. And it's like really, really, really basic.
It's definitely a fight where I think the challenge is artificial, which I realize is silly for a game that is literally everything is artificial, none of it is real. But I think, like, to your point, it is a very, like, if you were just able to go through the motions, you will just get through this fight in a matter of time. There's no real way to surprise them. And even to the point where, for me, I didn't find a weakness either. And so what I was doing was, even as they summoned their little guys, the first time I played this, I wasted actually a lot of time trying to take out the little guys too. Totally don't need to. I legitimately...
Oh yeah, I fully ignored him.
Yeah, this time what I would do is I would attack with me, I would attack with Junpei, and I would heal both of us with Takaba, and would just go in that circle, which, to your point, is not like the most engaging fight. It's a little fun, I guess, to have like the pressure of time, because you don't know if it's going to go down again, to be fair. It could go down to like a minute or under, you just have no idea. So there's a little bit of pressure that creeps in there. But once you have just like a smooth attack, heal going, I never had like a single bit of stress going through this one.
Yeah, so I loved the character design. I liked the theme. I just thought that this fight was really simple to a fault, basically, mechanically speaking. And I don't know. It just was like a little bit of a letdown to me. It was basically just a bigger health bar than a normal enemy, and that was it. Yeah, functionally speaking.
That's fair. I think what's interesting about this whole sequence, to your point of like feeling underwhelmed, is that in the way that the whole game has kind of been just going quick, like you just get thrown into the midst of things. That happens here. Like we were talking earlier about the expectation of getting to go back into Tartarus, probably having this kind of like event moment in there. It's unrelated to any of that. Like obviously it's related in a grand scheme, but you just go, you take out the shadow because it's a threat, and that's kind of the end of it. There's not really explanation for this.
There's also 0 save points in this entire day. I don't know if you noticed that. Mm-hmm. You start the day and you just go in and you can't save until the next day when you're in class again or whatever. It's very just, here's a thing. And this is something that I guess we can talk about this now because it happens over the next couple days, but it was another part of this that surprised me. Well, let's talk about the end of the fight really quick, I guess. So you beat this thing. You beat this shadow. You get the High Priestess Tarot item when you win, is what I wrote down, which I haven't figured out what to do with yet, but I'm sure will come up at some point. The train is still going after the shadow's defeated, and you just run in and pull a random lever and stop the train, pretty much. You get a rank up with the Fool Arcana, because you've bonded with your buds doing this big, scary fight. And then you get a quick cutscene back at base now. Yay, everybody's safe. Akihiko and Ikutsuki are talking about how the shadows have never done something like this. They've never seen them take over, work together to take over a giant thing like a train like that. So it's this different sort of thing. And Akihiko sort of cryptically asks Ikutsuki, does this mean it's begun? Dum dum dum. And Ikutsuki says, no, we don't know that yet, and you don't actually learn what it is yet. But they're sort of, clearly they know more about something that might be coming than you do.
Well, what's coming is him learning to get a better piece of transportation than a bike in the dark hours.
Yes.
Yeah, for me, I think what is most interesting about this day in context of the game so far is very much the like character moments of it and how it sets up, I think, a pretty surprising amount that even though you are in the midst of clearly an ongoing storyline for some of these characters, they still don't know anything. Like, it's still a big mystery, but I like the idea that it conveys that they are investigating what shadows are, what the dark hour is, what's all going on here. Like, the fact that this is outside of Tartarus means you don't know the full extent of how any of this is working, and anything at any moment could change or could be different in terms of this fight that you're having against them. So I think it is valuable in that sense, but it is
totally.
Yeah.
As a story beat, I thought it was very cool, right? I think, and this is what I wanted to talk about a little bit of, is like, I think part of the reason I was disappointed with this whole day, generally speaking, is because my expectations were off. Frankly, I came from Persona 5. I was expecting some sort of big boss fighty type event, and it was not that. It was basically just a story beat with a boss, right? And it was really cool in that context, like you're talking about. It was pretty neat to see them have to battle this thing, and if I hadn't had that sort of expectation coming in, I think I still would have thought the fight sucked, but I would have enjoyed the whole thing more. And I think going forward, I'm going to enjoy these more, because I'm not going to be putting quite as much weight on them. But similarly, the game does start to put weight on them too. You have the boys show up and tell you in a week there's going to be something happening, and like they do make a deal out of it as well. And then it was just this thing. And something that caught me as well in the same context is there's no like debrief afterwards. The next 2 days at least, because this is all I've played so far, there's no moment where everyone sits and talks and it's like, what the heck just happened? What was that? You never gather as a party to be like, well, that was really this wild thing. We need to step up our or like, there's nothing like that. They just move on, which surprised me.
Speaking of that, if I could, because I have some thoughts there, but just to like tie it in a little bit, Damon from the Patreon did ask, one of their questions was, the event that takes place during the full moon is a pretty big deal for Junpei, Yukari, and the player character. It's the first real event that takes place that get the three to bond and form this camaraderie that is clearly so important. But do you feel like this inciting incident was a bit too long in the making? I seem to recall Joker and the fledgling Phantom Thieves having their inciting event a bit quicker, though perhaps I'm misremembering through my rose-tinted glasses. But no, I do think, like, to some extent, to your point too, this is a fractured team. Like, this is not a bonded team, even by this point. This is really the first time you guys have been in Tartarus, but this is the first time the three of you as a unit with Mitsuru as backup have gotten the chance to kind of prove yourselves in a real threat scenario.
Yeah, I guess that's true, especially because Tartarus is sort of what you make of it, right? Like, theoretically, did you even have to get to the end of where you could in Tartarus by this point?
I don't think so. Please correct us out there if you're wrong. But yeah, because this isn't tied to it, there's a little bit that we can get to in the next day or two that kind of reveals maybe a bit about what this relates to when it comes to Tartarus. But
Yeah, you had to do the tutorial floor or whatever, but
yeah, but you could have not really had explored. So
I think what I need to do going forward, and I'm fully taking responsibility for some of why I was disappointed by this, but I think what another big change that I'm gonna have to wrap my head around is the structure of this game is very different in a way I enjoy. Again, this is not necessarily negativity coming through. It's just that I understand now Persona 5 was broken into very distinct chapters, defined by palaces that had sort of their own mid-story arc that you would meet this villain and you would track him down and then you defeat him and this big thing would happen. You have a new party member and it was a big old deal, right? And then you would go on to the next arc of that story, or the next story arc that was in the larger story. This game, I think I need to reset my expectations, is not that. It is a continuous thing, and that is evident in the way that you're making confidant friends. It's evident in the way that you're going to Tartarus when you want to. It's evident in a lot of different ways that this is one continuous thing that is going to have these moments within it rather than large chapters that take up whole sections of the game. And now that that's how I've got my brain around it, I think I'm going to enjoy it a lot more going forward. Not that I wasn't enjoying it. I just understand what it is now in a way I didn't before this full moon.
were you in my living room 2 months ago when I had this conversation with myself? Because yes, I think that's a pretty fair thing. And again, to your point, I think once we get toward the end of the game, we can talk a little bit more about like, do these things work? Do they not work? What does and what does? Because you'll see how things progress, obviously. But yeah, I think Persona 5 is obviously our touch point. And for those who did not start with Persona 5, I know there are a lot of those people obviously out there. I apologize to a certain extent that is the ping pong back and forth, that nature of what we have to do, but that is just our reference point. That is where we come from.
That's our experience with it.
And I think you're totally right. Persona 5 is like a television series of like seasons,
right,
like mini arcs that all eventually build up to like a big bad sort of thing. This feels more like one larger thing so far that has these moments that punctuate it, as you said. And I think it leads to the big moments not necessarily always feeling as big so far.
Right.
But I do think we learn a lot, to Damon's question of like, you have to recontextualize, I think, a lot of the way that you think about these characters and their situation, because it is so different from what the Phantom Thieves were.
This was not a climax, right? This was a moment in their journey. This was a big step for them. It was not the peak of anything, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah, now that I have my head around that, I think again, it's just sort of different than what I was expecting, but also I love that. I think it's cool that this is going to be distinct in a way I was not expecting. And I'm excited to see how this plays out.
Yeah, no, I totally think that's fair. I think we are at a very interesting place because you are seeing the S.E.E.S come together in a way they haven't before. I think there's some interesting character dynamics that we see at play. Junpei's bitterness towards you, Yukari being impressed that you saved them yet again and kind of feeling, graciousness for that. Mitsuru's frustration about not having enough power or being prepared. Akihiko being furious that they're not able to fight yet.
Right.
You're getting who these characters are more here, and I think it's helping to really establish the distinctiveness of them, both as individuals and as a team.
We get a cool line drawn between Akihiko and Junpei of like, Akihiko wanted to run in and they were like, you're gonna just get in the way because you're still injured, and he sort of was mad about that but accepted it, whereas Junpei just sort of ran in and got himself in trouble. It shows similarities and differences. It's really cool to sort of pick apart, but we need to pick that stuff apart when we've met these characters a little more. So let's go on to the day after this,
the big debrief day.
Yes. So the 10th, May 10th, our second to last day of the week, Yukari mentions that at the beginning of the day that there were people on the monorail that woke up after the dark hour and were wildly off course and had no idea what would happen or had happened. So we do get to see some of the effects of that, but they don't linger on that point very long. And then in the afternoon, I did a few things. So I went to Officer Kurosawa because I had to sell a bunch of support items in order to be able to afford the jelly tasting set from the Sunday TV thing. And Kurosawa mentions, and somebody else mentions this at some point too, that some of the people have woken up from their apathy, right? So they sort of, you find out, I think you talk about this with somebody else at some point, but the idea that defeating that shadow made some people wake up from their apathy syndrome to some extent. And Kurosawa just assumes it was you because he's the most trusting person in the world, which I love. So I bought that thing. I did that. And then in the afternoon, I spent time with Maya on the game, even though I wasn't leveling up. It just got me to the point where I would be able to level up.
Gotcha. I ranked up with Maya. But
because I don't... That's the thing is I was like... I didn't know why I did that. Maybe I guess I chose the wrong questions. And normally in P5, I'm used to like, oh, maybe I can get some points with them through conversations or other things, different ways, or through like, but I just wasn't sure if I would be ever interacting with her if I wasn't actively doing that. So
I would say the conversations are relatively stricter in this game in terms of how much you can get points. Like to my knowledge, if you're answering perfectly and you have a persona, you will guaranteed be able to just go rank up consistently like you could.
Gotcha. So I guess I screwed up a choice.
You probably did. And I will say that the choices in this game, at least for me, my first go around, I've definitely learned a little bit, obviously, as a second go. Not always obvious to me what there are some where it's like, yeah, I just got to keep saying yes to this person, being a hype
You're
man,
the best.
Yes man. And that tends to work, but not always. So yeah, it is very likely you missed a single one, and that can throw you off. So yeah, it can be tough.
I'm glad I did it anyway, you know?
Yeah.
Did you also, so you ranked up?
Right? I did rank up with Maya, so I was we got to rank 4, I believe. Yeah.
And then in the evening, we get the next sort of big mechanical development of the game, which is that Elizabeth, the helper from the Velvet Room, calls you. Side note, the UI when someone's calling you on the phone is so sick. It's you see the little person in the little phone icon next to their text box. It's very cool.
Yeah. I love the design of it.
Asks you to come to the Velvet Room and introduces this new system to you called requests, which are basically these little side mission request things to either get some items for her, specific items, or kill a certain number of shadows. There's a bunch of different ones. And she also mentions that she might ask you to escort her on excursions, although we don't know what that means yet. And then you get more requests and you get rewards. So like one of the immediate ones I got just gave me $10,000 immediately, or 10,000 yen immediately. And I was like, I'm rich. And then I looked at the prices of all the new items in the shop and was like, I'm still poor. So
yeah,
never mind.
No, by the time I was able to get requests, I could do 2. And
okay,
then
yeah, I got 2 immediately, and then I did a bunch more.
Yeah, these are, listen, Elizabeth has a lot of questions. She really, really needs help with a lot of things. So be prepared.
She's weirdly into soybean powder, too, which is adorable.
Yeah. They're funny. So these are totally optional at the end of the day for the main story progress as you're going through all these bits. There's one thing about them we can maybe talk about later, but they are, I would suggest, useful to do as soon as you can reasonably do them. You get a ton of rewards and a variety. Sometimes it's money, great weapons. I think the other item I got was a bow for Takaba.
Yeah.
There's just a lot you can get from doing these, and they're relatively small time sinks, I would say. Some are a little bit more involved, but they're also pretty funny most of the time, especially when you have to get her items or things of that nature. They're well written, they're silly, it's cute. It's a fun additive bonus that, to my understanding, was not here previously.
Oh, cool. I was wondering about that. But yeah, I'm really into them. They seem like a nice mix of flavor and mechanics and getting you to go out and do things in the world, and I'm excited to see more of them. One of them I tried to complete this evening, which is that you get one to go do the eat the massive burger challenge at the Wild Duck Burger, and I tried it and failed, but got a little bit more courage for trying it, and I figured, I'll eat that loss. I can waste a night on that.
You get a little bit of courage, but I believe in you. You'll get there one day.
Oh, thanks.
It maybe took me embarrassingly long to finish that one, but I did. It's worth doing.
I'll also say I wanted to go to Tartarus for this one, for both these nights, actually. I was like, I'm going to go to Tartarus right away. I was so sleepy in real world when I was playing these last 2 days. I was like falling asleep holding the controller at one point, and I was like, I can't go to Tartarus right now. So that's if you're wondering how the show affects our play style. That's part of it.
It does. No, to your point earlier, you were saying how you couldn't pause the day before. Sure is a bad day to start playing this game at like 11:30 at night and really just be sleepy from a long day and not finish and just pause your game and hope your PlayStation does an auto update overnight. Because that's what I had to do. Yeah, it can be tough sometimes, but I totally get where you're coming from. Anyway, yeah, that's a request.
What did you do that evening?
I just stayed at Wakatsu. Again, I'm trying to get my academics to 3. That is a big goal right now. I'd rather over-index in than under, so I am just doing that. Sure. I will also say she mentions when she calls, if I'm not mistaken, that a blocked path in Tartarus is now open.
Yes, so now we can go deeper in, I'm assuming. I haven't seen that yet, but that was my assumption, that you do this full moon thing and you can go further in.
How'd you figure that one out? Is what but yes, yeah, pretty much. The requests are fun. Well, we can maybe, as we get deeper in, talk about some of the weirder or funnier ones, but just keep up with them as you want. Again, they don't usually, to my memory, ever take time away. So you won't have to like lose an afternoon to complete requests.
Cool.
Yeah.
Moving on to the last day of the week, May 11th, Junpei in the morning comments about how wild the whole situation was 2 days ago, and then they just move on. Because again, you just never really talk about this with your team. And then you have a class that you can stay awake in or go to sleep. I stayed awake. I assume you did the same.
Of course.
And then what did you do in the afternoon?
I hung out with our new friend at the shrine.
Yeah, the little girl.
Yeah.
Maiko, you just go and play with her and get the Arcana confidant of the Hanged. And she mentions that her parents are getting a divorce, and it's just immediately very sad, and her person is a hanging person, and it's oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's rough. It's real rough.
She seems really cool though. I really like her.
It's a fun hang. You basically can kind of be like a very quick older brother to her.
Right, that's the vibe.
And you have a fun time. You get to choose which part of the playground you want to play on, and and now you've got this new Arcana, and you learn that it's gonna be a bit of a bummer, just because how do I, a teenager, console a child with parents going through a divorce?
Red Bull.
Yes, more Red Bull. That will definitely help the situation. But yeah, that was the same thing I did as well.
In the evening, Kirijo mentions that the command room equipment isn't working and that the others couldn't get it working. So you can go up and see this tape from the day before of Ikutsuki trying to, writing in a daily report. Now, I'll tell you, I've told you, I've been on the record of saying Ikutsuki is either your best friend or a secret villain, right?
Sure.
And I maintain that opinion. And I was sure this was going to be a hint towards his villaindom. I was sure this is where we're going to see some other side of him alone in the room, writing in his journal. And then it's just him making puns for like a solid, like multiple pages of dialogue. He's writing in it and he mentions how it might be beginning again cryptically. And then it's just joke after joke after joke after joke, and I was like sure it was gonna be the villain, and then it was just him being the most adorable goofball I have ever seen.
It's so fun because it does set up that expectation that it's like, oh, this is gonna really unfurl some story for me. Like this must be really important backstory info I'm about to get, and that backstory is more puns.
So many puns.
It's great. I will say, embarrassingly again, to show, hey, we're all human. The first time I did this, when they're like, hey, the room is broken, can you go look at the machinery? I scanned every damn inch of this room, being like, where is the mini game to fix the machine? Where do I do this? It must not be the stupid video thing. No, there's got to be something else I do. And I went in every corner 5 times, tried to do everything I could. It's just a video. But it was a fun video. But it was just, I was so embarrassed after that.
Well,
yeah.
You know.
So now I can live my shame publicly. Anyway, yeah.
And then that evening I just worked at the cafe because I would have gone to Tartarus, but I went to bed in real life instead.
And again, I ate at Wakatsu because I'm trying to get my academics up. But I also wrote in my notes, because I forget I haven't looked up. I do know there's like a specific number you can look up of how many stats you need. I wrote in my notes, I might actually replay these days if I get to level 3 too early. I will go back and just change some of my evenings. So if I do that next week, I'll tell you about that.
That'll be good to know. That's interesting.
But yeah, I'm like, either I'm doing this really smartly or I am wasting time. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's the end of the week. So just to touch on it real quick, next week, before we get into questions and the pop quiz, we're going to be going over May 12th. We're shifting the days slightly. So instead of doing May 12th to the 18th, we're doing May 12th to the 17th, because then whatchamacallit starts, the midterms start on the 18th, which we know. And midterms will take a while, and then the results get revealed on the 25th, according to the in-game calendar. None of this is spoilery. So what we're doing is we're doing May 12th to the 17th next week, and then we're going to do the 18th to the 25th. So we're doing one less day next week, and then one more day the following week, so that we can just break it up a little cleaner. This is part of what we were talking about at the beginning of this season, of trying to not cut off days or events in weird ways quite as much.
Yeah, show is still going to come out at the normal schedule, but we're just going to kind of do the days a little bit shifted, because it just makes more sense to not break up the exams.
Yep.
But yeah, it should be fun.
But we have some listener questions, isn't that correct?
We do. We actually have a few that, as I'm going through them now, I'm like, maybe, we'll save some of these. But there's one I want to grab from Sarah.
This is the other thing about that. Midterms are going to be a quick week, so we can we'll take some more questions that week.
That's
for sure.
Exactly. There's actually some great ones here about in terms of like what we think about aspects of the game so far that I want to save for that week. So if you wrote in this week over at the Patreon at patreon.com/take your time, don't fear. I have them all in the doc, but man, it makes a lot more sense now that we've talked through what the next 2 weeks are.
Yep.
Anyway, Sarah wrote in and asked, why do you think they didn't include the femc, or, female main character, as it's colloquially kind of portmanteaued into, in this version of the game? I'm bummed in general that Atlas rarely gives us the option to play a female main character in these self-insert characters. And then just also as a bonus question, do you think that Reload could be released on the basically canon at this point, Switch 2, or as I love to call it, the Super Nintendo Switch? Second question, much easier. I assume absolutely. That just feels like a given at this point. They got P5 on Switch 1. This has been the fastest selling Persona game. They're going to sell it to more people if they can.
I think so. In a matter of time. And the main character thing, I don't know the details of exactly what this changes, but what I've heard is that it's pretty substantial. And I just imagine it's either a budget thing or a production thing that they just like. I mean, it's disappointing. I absolutely don't disagree with you, right? It is unfortunate, but I'd imagine somebody somewhere just said, we can't swing this because it would be too much work or too much time or whatever, and so they kept it to what the base game was. I mean, you notice maybe they'll do DLC, because they're also doing the DLC of the alternate ending or whatever from the other version of it. So maybe that'll come later, but I think probably it was just a matter of, some stupid spreadsheet number crunching.
To my knowledge, I think they've even said past this DLC right now, there are no plans for this, because it was essentially a big, to your point, production thing, where it is, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I wish it was in here. I, in fact, know a lot of people prefer the female main characters kind of relationships that you're able to get into. There are different confidants. I actually, now having played this game 1 and a 12th time so far, am pretty dead set on playing P3P at some point, just because I do really want to see the female main characters play through, how that changes some story stuff. I'm really interested to see it because I think it's just such an interesting twist for a game that it matters that much. But I would really assume it comes down to they'd have to record a whole other set of like dialogue options for saying, you know, probably certain pronouns a certain way. Obviously a whole bunch of new scenes. It creates just those levels. And unfortunately those things can spiral and just cost a lot. So yeah,
it's both sides of it, right? It is, I think it's worth doing, but it is also a not negligible amount of extra work. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things too, where I'm like, I really wish this was in here, because I think from like not even a moral standpoint, but just from like it exists. There's a base like blueprint for how that plot line would work. It's not like they would have to massively figure out how the game would work. They know where it could go, but it is probably just the practicalities of a thing, which doesn't, again, to your point, make it not a bummer. I absolutely think it is a frustrating disappointment to not see that in here, because as Sarah pointed out, it's pretty rare. 3, 4, and 5, which are kind of the main modern Persona canon, are all male main characters at their base. So yeah, it's, I hope Persona 6 gives the option or goes with a female main character.
Yeah. I think if they don't at this point, it'd be a bummer. Yeah. Like it would no longer be like oh, this is, frustrating. And it would be an active, like, what are you doing?
Come on. We can see another side of the story for a little bit. So I really hope that is the case. But we'll see what happens. That's a seasons ahead of us for now. But yeah, I share the disappointment, Sarah. I really do hope we both do, and it makes me want to see that female character storyline. Sarah also mentioned, though, I just wanted to shout this out because I think it's really cool. I didn't know it was happening until they mentioned it, that they are attending Atlas Fez, or Fes without a T, in Japan in June. So this is a thing that's happening that Atlas is throwing. To my understanding, they're going to have Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance and Metaphor Refantasia. This is not an ad. Just thought it was cool that it's happening. And they're going there, and we're just looking that if there are other Take Your Time fans that want to hang out, if they are also going to hang out. So this is me publicly calling for like, hey, if you're a fan of this show, you're going, right on the YouTube comments, head over to the Patreon and join there if you want to chat with Sarah about it and anyone else who may be going. I just think it'd be really cool if we saw some Take Your Time fans there. And, obviously Sarah and anyone else who goes, let us know how the event is. Hope it's a fun time. And yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Cool.
So yeah, as I said, there were other questions that I do want to include, I think, for later weeks when we have a lot more time. So thank you to everyone who wrote in. I promise we're not forgetting about these questions, but just, yeah, we'll have the time for them soon. Yes. Amy did ask, though, how many times can you listen to Junpei say perfecto before you lose your minds? Which I just thought was fun.
At least once more.
That's fair. Well, if Tom comes crazy on the next episode, we know it's happened twice. But yeah, thank you to everyone else who wrote in, Matthew, Damon, a few other people as well who left comments. I have them bookmarked and I'm looking forward. I think there's going to be some fun discussions with them in the coming weeks. But yeah, Tom, you got a pop quiz?
Yes, I do have a pop quiz question. How much context do you want for this one? None or some?
Start with none. If I feel like it's just cruel, I'll ask for some.
All right, your pop quiz question this week is, rabbits can't die from sadness, but what can they die from?
I almost don't want to ask for the context, even though I need it, because I think just leaving it at that is, I'll leave it up to you. You're the pop quiz.
There's a conversation at some point in this game that is a non-skippable. You will have all seen it, where this is brought up, where somebody says, rabbits can die from sadness, and somebody else says that's not true, but they can die from.
Oh, I think I remember this.
So I'm asking what do they actually die from? It's don't give me answers like old age. I won't. That's not what I'm looking for.
That's your pop quiz. Poisoning, obviously.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's your pop quiz for this week. Again, we're going to be playing through May 12th to May 17th next week, and the 18th to 25th after it. If you enjoy the show, please leave a like, subscribe to the youtube.com/Dornology, rate it on whatever podcast service you use. If you really like it, patreon.com/takeyourtime. If you want to support us directly, we would appreciate it, as always, but no pressure. And if you want to find us on socials, at Tom R. Marks and JM Dornbush on basically whatever platform you want to do that on. Send us a message, leave a comment, do whatever you want to do. We'd love to hear from you. And I think that's about all I have. Jonathan?
I don't have a catchphrase yet, but Tom, do you want to do your famous catchphrase?
Perfecto.